and the meeting is being recorded. We're going to have a special program tonight called Housing is Preventative Medicine with our partner, Golden Community Partners. And we're looking forward to the speakers, and then we'll have some breakout rooms to talk about what we've learned about halfway through or 3/4 of the way through. So welcome, and I think I'll ask Annie to put up the first slide. So Don Cameron and I are the co-chairs of the Golden United Housing Task Force, and we're excited for this meeting. Annie Albrecht is doing tech tonight, so if there are any tech problems, private message Annie. And Josh Edelson is taking over Annie's position. We're happy to have him, and you'll probably be seeing some emails from him, so don't delete Josh's emails. He's our new guy, and we're looking forward to it. So we've got some great speakers tonight talking about the links between housing and health and affordable housing and Jeffco, and some solutions and what this means for our community. And so we've got a pretty tight program. I'm going to try to keep us on time, and which means that we may not have time for everyone's question, but at the end of each major section, we'll have a little 5-minute question and answer period. And I'll ask you, since there's so many folks, if you have a question, would you please put it in the chat? And then we'll get to what we can during the program, and the speakers will try to answer the rest of the questions in the chat after they've spoken. So I guess we get moving now. We're going to start off with talking about the links between housing and health. And we have two presenters that I think are going to tag team this, Katie Miller and Mariah Bell, both with Centura. Katie is a registered nurse with Centura Health Physician Group at the Golden Primary Care Clinic. She has been a nurse for 15 years in a variety of settings and specialties. She lives here in Golden with her husband and 3 daughters and is grateful to be a part of this supportive community. She is also very grateful to have access to our precious natural space. Mariah Bell is the Community Health Project Coordinator for Centura Health. She received her Master of Public Health degree at Colorado School of Public Health in Fort Collins. She has been working for Centura for 5 years, addressing social determinants of health with patients in both the clinical and hospital environments. She enjoys doing all the Colorado activities on the weekend with her dog and boyfriend. So I'll turn it over to Katie and Mariah.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. Bear with me for a second. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. All right, well, thanks for having me talk with you guys tonight. Mariah and I are going to talk to you a little bit about housing as preventative medicine and kind of give an introduction to the subject, and then everybody can go in a little bit deeper about the nuances in the community more specifically. So my section of the presentation is going to come at it from a more clinical perspective and really connect the housing environment with the effects of your health. So as mentioned, I'm just going to, oh, there we go. Oh, wow. I'm Katie, and Mariah, we've already been introduced, and I have been with the Centura Clinic at the Golden Primary Care Site for the last 3.5 years. And there's a great group of people there. It's a great place to work, and we're really focusing on addressing the whole person health of our patients. So this topic in particular is important to us. So there's a really strong connection between housing security and our health. This is a graph that I borrowed from the World Health Organization, and it has each of the factors there that can contribute to our health. You'll notice lifestyle, environment, health treatment, and also biology. But the important thing to note here about this image is that none of those things exist on their own. There was interplay between. So, so that's an important piece that we watch too. These figures can be a little misleading in that way. So, for example, if you have trouble paying your rent or your mortgage, that can also affect your ability to go and get that health treatment that was recommended by your provider. If it means that you might have to work, miss some hours of work and potentially lose that income. So that's a factor that might fall under a health treatment, but it can also be affected by your housing security. Lifestyle too, in this example, it can be affected by housing insecurity. If you're stressed and the coping strategies that you have to deal with the stresses of housing insecurity might not be healthy strategies, but they're the ones that and the ones that are available to you for coping, that can also affect your overall health, even though it would be in under the lifestyle environment. So this was a big transition that we've had in the last couple of decades. Traditionally in medicine, people mostly approached health from just the biological perspective, and a lot of it was assumed to be related to genetics. And now we have a much better understanding of all the different factors that go into your health and well-being. So, this is kind of outline that, and then there's a strong connection in research. As I mentioned, in the last few decades, it's really there's really been some good research that's come out, and while not all of the mechanisms are understood, there's been a connection demonstrated between chronic stresses like housing insecurity to anything from like childhood asthma and cognitive development to cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. So it is something that affects us and our health, and it is related to the chronic stress. So as I mentioned, there's this idea that we now need to look upstream. So, historically, we were treating the symptoms, and now there's really an emphasis in medicine and in healthcare to look at the contributing factors and try to help address those so that instead of just treating the symptoms. So there's a parable that people often cite when you talk about these sort of connections. And it's the story of a bunch of people in a fast moving river, and there's water, there's hazards, and 3 people respond, and one person's pulling people out of the river one at a time, trying to save as many people as they can. And the second person builds a raft and tries to get people into the raft and bring them to shore to safety. And then the third person is running upstream, pulling people as they go, trying to save people, but trying ultimately to get to the source and figure out who or what is causing all the people to fall in the river and address it at its source. So that's the idea of looking upstream. And that's how our staff and providers are trained now. And you should see that as an approach to your primary care specifically. So that's something that we do in our clinic, and we have screenings that take place at our primary care visits to try to identify those needs that could either be causing symptoms or could cause future symptoms, and try to help address those needs where they start upstream. So That's the idea behind that. And then this is outlining what they call allostatic load. And it's a perceived stress that your brain registers. And that in itself is subjective and unique to the person. So there's a perceived stress, and it has a physiological response. And your body goes through a process of adapting to that stress. And allostatic load is a term that you'll hear regarding to the wear and the tear on your body from the effects of stress. And it's from the chronic and repeated stress, such as a housing insecurity, which is usually not often easily remedied. And so this is a picture that I found that I really liked. I thought it demonstrated pretty well the process, the physiological process that your body does, that your body goes through when it experiences stress. So stress is a normal response, and it's a protective response to biofeedback that your body's getting. And it's kind of like a fever where it's actually got protective properties. It's a good and appropriate response to a degree. If the body goes through that response process and it never receives the signal to return to normal, that's when you see the chronic health issues. So you'll see at the first signal is at the hypothalamus, and it receives the signal that there's stress. It actually goes via the pituitary gland down to the adrenal glands, which release those catecholamines. And you'll recognize those as like the epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. And they work on the different systems within the body. So like the norepinephrine, for example, causes vasoconstriction. So you could get that high blood pressure. And again, these things are good and protective if you need to respond acutely to stress. But if you have that chronic stress, it has a deteriorative effect. So there's also, you can notice that it acts there on your liver and causes breakdown of the stored energy. So you're converting, that's both a process of breaking down sugars that are stored sugar form, and then fats and utilizing those for energy. And those two things are the contributors for diabetes and for cardiovascular disease. So there's a lot going on there. And again, in an acute environment, an acute response, that's all appropriate. But over time, if it doesn't go back to its normal state, it can have consequences. So this is a slide that I found on the Mayo Clinic. They are such a great resource for patient education. And so this is some common effects that we have. And it's important to note that you might have a lot of those symptoms, physiological symptoms. And then you're also going to have some behavioral changes too. It can really affect your relationships. And again, all of this is tied together as a whole person. You've got how you're feeling physically, emotionally, mentally, and it's all tied together and affecting each other. So it's important to recognize those and again, try to look upstream and see what could be causing those symptoms. And then I would be remiss if I didn't suggest some of the things that you could do, of course, for stress relief. Again, with these chronic stresses like housing insecurity, there's not a quick fix. And it's important to address your stress as you seek options for resolving the source of the stress. So these are things you can do to mitigate the stress in the moment while you work with your resources, and your primary care provider is a great one. So you can address your stress, do what's therapeutic for you. That looks different for everybody. So try different things. If you find something's not helpful, you could try something else and maybe go back to that thing later. Sometimes it's just where you're at in your life, and it would work for you later. There have been some people will try therapy like video games because it's fun and it feels mindless, and it actually is not for most people. It's found that it's got like a very little stress relief effect in the longer term, in the medium and longer term. So you know, other things that would help, and also avoid things like caffeine and alcohol. They might make you feel better in the short term, but probably aren't going to help your stress longer term. And then, oh gosh, you know what? Let me share, Mariah, can you share your slides for this next section? Because this is the outdated one. I'll stop sharing my screen. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect, Katie. Thank you. Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Again, I'm Mariah, and I'm the Community Health Project Coordinator. I have actually seen quite a few of you in JEFCO meetings, so hello, hello again. So I'm just going to be talking about more of the community health advocate perspective, so a little less clinical. But still talking about the stressors and how that these stressors of experiencing homelessness and how that impacts your health on other varying levels outside of stress as well. So I'm going to share my screen. But one thing I will say, something that Katie was talking about and part of the clinic at Golden is that we screen patients for social determinants of health. So we ask them, you know, about housing, food insecurity, transportation needs, all of these different things to kind of really get at the meat of what is going on upstream, like Katie said. So upstream, what is happening that is making it so that you're not getting the best health outcomes. You're not able to decrease your cholesterol. You're not able to manage your diabetes, things like that. So we get a lot of this information from those screenings. And then we also, and that's why we know that when you're experiencing homelessness, that can truly impact your health. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to share my screen. Well, first I'm going to share my screen, and then hopefully it won't be a struggle bus for me to figure out how to make sure that it's okay. We've got it. All right. I think everyone can see this screen. Is that okay? Perfect. Annie says yes. All right. So there are 3 different types of homelessness that we see. So we have chronic, transitional, and episodic. So chronic is someone who is just truly living in the shelter system and or living in those camps that you'll see in Denver, Golden, all over Colorado. Transitional is for folks that are entering that shelter system, but it's usually for just a very short period of stay. And they're a lot of the time considered the precariously housed population. So they're the ones that potentially could be one paycheck away, which is a lot more than you would think. They're one paycheck away from not being able to pay rent, or not being able to, because they don't have savings, potentially fix a car. If they can't fix their car, they can't get to work. And there's all of these other kind of domino effects to transitional homelessness. And then episodic, which is you are periodically having the stable housing, but then going back into the shelter system when your housing is not available. This is a lot of the time due to like mental health or disability issues. So the next part of so what causes homelessness? And I think we're going to talk a lot about this today, I'm sure, but lack of affordable housing, low income, you're unable to pay for food, clothing, transportation, and your housing on top of that. Your health, stable housing is sometimes really too difficult to maintain when you have a poor health condition. Like if you're not able to take your diabetes medication and that impacts your memory, and then you maybe don't pay your rent, or maybe there's all these little different aspects that come into play. Escaping violence, the impact on racial disparities. And this information is from the endhomelessness.org. And they said that most minority groups in the United States experience homelessness at a higher rate than whites, and therefore make up a disproportionate share of the homeless population. And then
only a couple minutes left in this section. Thanks.
You got it. Yes, Kathy, thank you. I'll be very quick. And then age and sexual orientation. So some of the health impacts on folks who are experiencing homelessness is like healthy eating. If you don't have a stable house to prepare your food, if you don't have a stove, if you don't have any source of heat, things like that, you're probably not going to be able to cook yourself up a meal. You might have microwaves, so then you do microwave dinners, which are usually fairly cheap. You're not going to be getting those fresh vegetables or fruits or meats that are needed in your diet. Medication management. That's very, very low on someone's list when they're experiencing homelessness. So they're not able to, again, be on top of, say, like their depression medication. And so if they're not on top of their depression medication, that makes it harder for them to really be motivated to look for housing or be able to even kind of get together enough to be organized to do something like that. Living conditions, you know, we all know mold and things like that really impact folks' health, but there's also the idea that if you're living on the streets or you're living in an encampment where unfortunately the sanitation isn't actually sanitation, then your health is really impacted. Or if you're living out of your car, you're not able to shower as often as you need or wash your hands, or, you know, especially in COVID times, there's really not access to running water if you're living out of your car. And then of course the stress impacts and the, again, access to sanitation, especially for women and female sanitation products. That's really hard for women in general who are experiencing homelessness, but imagine living in your car, living on the streets, and having to worry about menstruation. So those are things that are all kind of coming into play on health specifically. And then finally, this shouldn't take too long. I just wanted to talk about some of the organizations that are really awesome that are working towards helping folks address barriers when it comes to being housed. So these are just a few, and they're not all encompassing. I think we're going to learn a lot more tonight as well, but we have like Change the Trend. They're a coalition that has all of these different organizations that come together that actually have a navigation program, a rehousing program, and a program that helps get those that are experiencing homelessness in to see a doctor probably for the first time in years sometimes. And that's based out of Littleton. And then we have Brothers Redevelopment. They're a great organization. They specifically help seniors, but really anybody in the Denver metro area, and maybe even larger actually. But they help folks find affordable housing, which again is something that we'll probably talk about because it is hard to find affordable housing in Colorado. But they're the ones that are to call when that happens. And then of course we have the Urban Peak Youth Shelter. They really help those teenagers that are experiencing homelessness. Imagine a teenager, yourself as a teenager living on the streets and not being able to navigate so many different things. They also help children get their GED or graduate high school so that they can at least have that first stepping stone into life. And then finally, Hunger Free Golden. I'm sure you all have heard of them. While they help our community with food security, they also help by kind of pulling all of these different data pieces together to talk to the Golden City Council about transportation and why that's important. And, you know, housing isn't singular, and that you might be experiencing housing insecurity, but then also food insecurity, but then also transportation, but then also you're scared all the time, so you're dealing with stress. So those are some of the great organizations that really come together and work hard for those that are experiencing homelessness.
Thank you so much, Mariah and Katie, for such a great introduction to this topic. Really appreciated. And we're running a little behind, so if I could get you to please put your questions in the chat and ask Katie and Mariah to please answer in the chat, if that's okay. Thank you so much. So our next speaker, moving on to our next topic area about affordable housing in Jefferson County. Our next speaker is Brian Rosbert. Brian's the Executive Director of Housing Colorado. He grew up in the mountains of Colorado and attended Adams State College, where he majored in history and government. He went on to work at the state and federal level for John Salazar, the former congressman from Colorado's 3rd Congressional District. Since then, he has worked in the nonprofit sector for organizations committed to the common good. Most recently, Brian was the interim executive director of the Interfaith Alliance of Colorado, where he oversaw the Housing Equity Campaign, which is a program dedicated to advocating for more affordable housing and partnering with nonprofits, congregations, and local governments to build affordable housing on underutilized land. Brian and his wife, Laura, live in Denver with their 2 daughters and their dog, Freddie. Take it away, Brian. Thank you very much.
You're on mute, Brian. We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I'm going to share my screen. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and share a little bit with you about affordable housing and in Jefferson County and around the state. As Kathy said, I'm the Executive Director of Housing Colorado. And Housing Colorado believes that safe, stable, and healthy communities are built upon the foundation of housing. We are a nonprofit membership organization working with the housing community to educate and advocate for the building and preservation of housing for low to moderate income Coloradans. We're a unified voice of nearly 300 organizations and over 6,000 individuals across the state who represent diverse housing perspectives. I don't think I need to tell you this, but Colorado has a housing problem. I think we're all too well aware that the short supply and the high demand have made the housing prices soar in our state. This has left a lot of folks in desperate need of housing that is attainable and affordable. The National Low Income Housing Coalition, which we're a part of, puts out an annual report called Out of Reach, which documents the so-called housing wage for each state. This wage is what it would cost to afford a 2-bedroom rental in the state. And Colorado comes in with the 9th highest housing wage in the state at $26.45 per hour. As you might be able to deduce, that is not enough that is not an amount that Colorado's lowest wage earners can afford without being cost burdened, which means that they're spending over 30% of their income on housing related costs. In fact, we know that 1 in 4 Coloradans spend more than 50% of their income on housing, putting these residents at financial risk and destabilizing our communities. The most recent available data from the Division of Housing shows the need for affordable units both for rent and sale far exceeds the available supply. DOH estimates a total of 300,000 renting and owning households were severely cost burdened across the state, and that was well before the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the National Low Income Housing Coalition estimates about 1 in 5 Colorado renter households are extremely low income, and that Colorado has a shortage of 113,000 of affordable available homes for these households. In Jefferson County, the problem is just as acute, if not more so than the rest of the state. In just Jefferson County, for instance, the housing wage for a 2-bedroom rental is about $30.12. And here's a breakdown of the vacancy rates, affordable monthly rent, and the approximate hourly wage needed to afford rent in Jefferson County. And then here's a breakdown of that same data for municipalities in Jefferson County. You'll see that Golden ranks as the hardest place to live affordably in all of Jefferson County. Golden has the lowest vacancy rate, the highest average monthly rate, rent and the highest wage needed to afford that rent. According to Redfin, April home sales were up by 5.7% compared to last year, and the median sale price was at $712,000. In many cases, this is unattainable for workers such as firefighters and teachers in Golden, and those and other professionals have to travel into the city to work because they can't afford to live there. We also know that there are challenges beyond the market alone. Waiting lists for affordable housing spots in Jeffco are long, and the lottery system often has upwards of 7,000 people taking part in it. Systemic barriers are also a challenge here in Golden, from a bond cap that necessitates partnership with other communities to build affordable units, to a growth cap that limits the new units that can be built. Golden finds itself in a very challenging position. All that adds up to housing insecurity for thousands of, oops, sorry, there's Freddie. He scared me. Adds up to housing insecurity for thousands of Jeffco residents. And housing insecurity is also often associated with worse health outcomes. According to a survey published in May of 2020, nearly half of the people without stable housing reported that their health was fair or poor compared to those with stable housing. Similarly, mental health outcomes are correlated with housing instability as well, as you can see from this chart. What's more is that housing insecure people were more likely to report poor health than those with incomes below the federal poverty level of $25,750 for a family of 4. We know that this population faces disproportionate barriers to accessing health and healthcare, yet they still reported better health than the housing insecure. So making that connection between health and housing is certainly one important step towards rectifying the barriers to creating new and attainable housing for low and moderate income individuals. In doing so, we're able to speak more expansively about housing, and it becomes more than just about a place to live. It becomes a part of the very fabric of most public policy. At Housing Colorado, we've been working on a project we're calling the Essential Foundation, how to talk to Coloradans about housing. In this project, we lay out a messaging framework that is rooted in the idea that by creating stable and attainable housing in our communities of all types, we are building healthier, safer, and more inclusive places for all Colorado residents. We're hoping to launch this project in the fall, and perhaps we could come back to Golden United at that time to train you up on how to talk to your neighbor and your decision makers about housing in your community. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have for me, or I can do that in the chat as well.
We've got time for a couple of questions, I think. Thank you very much, Brian. And we certainly do want to get trained up to talk about housing.
Sure.
So, would love that. Does anyone have a question if they want to raise their hand or unmute?
Brian, this is Don Cameron. I have a quick question. Is anybody in Colorado moving forward with housing first approach? And if so, where and how is it going?
I believe that Denver is doing housing first. I could be wrong, but I know that that's kind of the approach that they've wanted to take for a long time. And, you know, it is sort of the best practice. You know, we know that the only cure to homelessness is housing, really. And so the housing first model is one that's worked in other places. I'm pretty sure that Denver is a housing first city. And then as Linda said, there are organizations that use a housing first approach as well, like Family Tree.
Oh, Ryan, this is Dindy Sloan. I just saw today there was some hope on the horizon, and that Governor Polis announced that some of the pandemic relief money could be used for affordable housing if it were denser housing. There's probably too early to react to anything like that, but where do you think you might go with denser housing?
With what kind of housing? I'm sorry.
Denser housing.
More density. Yeah, you know, we've been working with the legislature and the governor on a couple pieces of legislation. One that got introduced this week is about some of the American Recovery Plan Act. It's a weird name for the law. The COVID-19 relief funds. That there's about a $500 million pot of money that's being earmarked for affordable housing. So 100 million of that is going to go to the Division of Housing right away to help in the eviction prevention work that they're doing. And then there's going to be an interim task force if this piece of legislation passes, that's going to kind of come up with how to spend the other $450 million. This is one-time money, so it's kind of, we wouldn't want to start really any new programs because it would need to be funded in the into the future. The other piece of legislation that passed this year is an inclusionary zoning bill that the governor signed on Friday. And in that bill, there was a requirement that cities utilize some other tools before using inclusionary zoning, which means for a development, there's a requirement to build affordable housing as a part of a development. So cities would need to do things like density bonuses, which really help sort of build the density into a project. You know, and a density bonus might be code says that you can go to 8 stories, or the current zoning says you can go to 8 stories, but if you build affordable housing as a part of that project, you can go up to 10 stories. So there are some opportunities for that. I know the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit work happening in Denver is kind of one of those ideas as well to increase density in local communities.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Brian. Very informative and sobering talk. Really appreciate it. There's a question in the chat that would be great if you could answer in the chat.
One of the
big questions. Thank you, Mariah, for the big
Sure
question. So we're going to move on now. Don Cameron, among his many things that he does, is now a producer of short films, and he's going to introduce a short film that he just made. Don?
Yeah, thank you. The focus of these films is actually to around education as well. We've made films with our police chief and fire chief about the inability of our first responders to find affordable housing in Golden. We've interviewed people who lost bidding wars, but made $120,000 and were unable to obtain a house in Golden. And this next video, and this is I guess the world premiere, I interviewed a woman who is living with her 5 children in a 700 square foot 2-bedroom apartment, and just barely making it. And she works in the nonprofit sector, is very proud of the work she's doing, and really tells her kids, it's important to me to be working in the nonprofit sector despite the quality of life that she's able to provide for them as a result of her low pay. So with that, we'll kick it off and we'll hear from Robin Palmer, who lives in Jeffco. There should be audio, so you might have to restart it, Annie. And while she's bringing it up, also, these are generic actors in the pictures because of privacy concerns.
Sorry, everyone. Give me one moment to fix this.
And I'm going to drop in the chat our playlist of all the videos. So you're welcome to bookmark it and go seek them out later.
All right, let me try this again.
I work full-time for Habitat for Humanity. Started off part-time and built up to full-time, and I'm now merchandising supervisor. On my own income, which is all that I have. I don't collect child support from my ex-husband. It is literally just my income from a nonprofit. So we have lived now in a 2-bedroom, 700 square foot apartment, you know, and 4 days a week. It's the 6 of us. The stress that it has caused all of us, you know, with as hard as I have worked in this past nearly 3 years, and, you know, the fact that I brought myself up really from nothing. I should have this great sense of pride in that. But what really holds me back is the fact that, you know, our housing situation has become just so frustrating, terrifying at times. There have been many struggles between the children. There's nowhere to go, you know. When me and my siblings would fight, it would be, you go to this room and you go to this room and, you know, calm down and talk it out later. And, you know, these are not things that happened, you know, when my ex and I were still together. You know, we lived in a 2,000 square foot home. Everybody had their own bedrooms. We did not have this kind of stress and this kind of friction. For the sake of his mental well-being, I ultimately had to concede and let my oldest drop out of high school as a senior. Ultimately, I had to just say, with as important as education is, his mental health is that much more important. At one time or another, all 6 of us have been in therapy. When you have as many people under your care as I do, you know, the thought of a stranger sleeping inches from my front door is, you know, nerve-wracking. But it is frightening when you open your door at 6 a.m. and there's a person there. There's plenty that I'm grateful for, but my circumstances definitely of the past few years have been disheartening.
So there you have it, the world premiere. Thank you, Don. I think Robin is on. Do you want to just take a quick moment to say anything? Robin, the star of the show.
That's weird. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have more to share, but I'm happy to, you know, answer questions if anyone has any. And I'm an open book. Just, yeah.
Well, thank you for volunteering to do this and opening up like this and sharing. We really appreciate it. And if anyone has a question for you, is it okay to put them in the chat and you can answer them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you, Robin, and thank you, Don. We're gonna move on to some solutions that we're seeing in Jeffco for some of the issues. Certainly scratching the surface, but there's a lot to be done. So we're moving on to solutions, and our first speaker is Rebecca Radabau. Hopefully I didn't mess up your name too bad, Rebecca. She is the homeless navigator for Golden, Wheatridge, and Edgewater. She has extensive experience working in the social work field with individuals experiencing homelessness. Most recently, she worked as a case manager for Urban Peak, a nonprofit in Denver that assists individuals experiencing homelessness with meeting their goals and becoming self-sufficient. She has experience using strength-based case management and trauma-informed care and is certified in mental health first aid. In her free time, Rebecca enjoys spending time in the mountains, enjoying the beautiful scenery. So take it away, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. So as Kathy stated, my name is Rebecca. I am the homeless navigator for not only Golden, but Wheatridge and Edgewater. So I serve all three of the cities. My role was brought on as kind of a countywide initiative. So we have navigators in each of the different municipalities that serve individuals experiencing homelessness. A little bit about my program. So we do follow the Housing First model as well. My program, I'm kind of through the different cities, but I work with individuals completing intakes and assessments, working towards stable housing and providing any resources that individuals may need for their basic needs, or really navigating individuals or families to the right place and making sure that they know and are aware of those resources. A lot of the clients that I do serve are that chronic population that was in one of the slides. So I see a lot of individuals who are currently living unsheltered. And so kind of as it was kind of spoken about before, that does take a huge role, a toll on people's physical and mental health, having unstable housing. For example, some of the clients I work with that are living unsheltered, they carry all of their belongings with them. So they're always constantly worrying about, can I take my belongings with me? How long is this trek going to be? Is it going to be feasible for me to take all of my belongings? If they leave them, then they're going to get stolen. They're also constantly worrying about safety. Is it safe to stay where they are at nighttime? Are they going to be able to sleep through the night feeling safe? As well as just making sure they have food and all of their basic needs met. And so kind of going off some of the other things that were said in this, these individuals are continuously worrying about safety and food and belongings. And because they're constantly worrying about that and it's taking a toll on their physical and mental health, they're unable to focus on other services like employment or mental health or substance treatment. And so that's what I'm seeing in the community, just a little bit about that. And I am reaching out and doing outreach to individuals who are living unsheltered. I take referrals from any individuals who are at risk or already experiencing homelessness and work with them towards stable housing. And I think that concludes what I was going to speak about.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. And we're going to have another speaker, and then we'll take questions for Rebecca and the other speaker at the end. So thank you, and we're so happy to have you in Golden, and I'm sure that Wheatridge and Edgewater are happy to have you too. It's a great program. Our next speaker is Linda Behringer. Linda lives in Jefferson County and has been part of the Solutions to Homelessness Coalition in Metro Denver for many years. She has served on the Metro Denver Homelessness Initiative Board and was a founder and chair for many years of Heading Home Jeffco, Community Steps to Housing. Currently, she chairs the Crisis Resolution Committee of Heading Home, is operations director for Just Living, which is a sober living residence in Lakewood that serves the LGBTQAI+ community, and is the program developer for the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative. In her spare time, Linda raises chickens, grows herbs, does Pilates, walks her 1-year-old puppy, and is in a book club in Boulder. For added fun, she loves garage sales, both having and perusing them. Take it away. I guess we're going to start with a short video about safe parking before Linda actually gives her talk. So if you could key up the safe parking video. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Baker House, co-founder of the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Brogan, and I'm one of the co-founders of Colorado Safe Parking Initiative.
Around 1,000 people in the Denver metro area are living in their vehicles.
Most are experiencing homelessness for the first time, and many are working but can't afford housing.
Without our support, they may fall deeper into homelessness and eventually end up on the streets.
Safe lots can change this trajectory.
Located in existing parking lots that otherwise are vacant at night, safe lots provide safe, legal overnight parking with restroom access.
The lots provide a sense of security and community for guests who are connected to the services they need, including help finding housing. Safe lots also reduce the impacts of homelessness on our community.
The Colorado Safe Parking Initiative is working with local communities to create a network of safe lots across the metro area.
Together, we can help our unhoused neighbors to stabilize their lives and get back on their feet.
Visit our website to learn more about how you can help.
Thanks, Annie, for showing that. So again, I'm Linda. I'm with the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative, and just so you know, we do not reveal the locations of the safe lots, but in order to keep people from just driving in who are not permitted to be there. But that particular video was shot in Jefferson County. There are 2 lots currently in Jefferson County, one in Golden and one in Arvada. There are 2 more lots coming on, hopefully, cross your fingers soon, one in Lakewood and another one in Arvada. There are also lots in Aurora. One lot in Aurora just opened this weekend. There are 3 lots in Longmont, 3 lots in Broomfield, and 1 lot in Boulder. So there's a total of 9 lots now, but the intention of Colorado Safe Parking Initiative is to establish lots across the metro area so people can be close to their work, close to their doctor's appointments, close to their children's school, wherever they need to be. We recognize that safe parking is not a solution to homelessness, but what it does provide is safety, sanitation, some respite to not being able to sleep at night because you're being asked to move or someone's knocking on your car window or you're just afraid. And it also provides connection to the community of other people that park there and connection to services. Primarily the lots are so far have been set up in church lots. And the ease of setting them up is amazing because we use an existing resource. We bring in a porta potty and there you have it. You have a safe lot. And then we utilize volunteers from the churches. So the cost is low. The impact is great. It utilizes an existing resource, which is a parking lot, an empty parking lot. And also the whole intention, I know we mentioned earlier in this talk tonight about pushback from neighborhoods, but the whole intention is to be sort of hidden in plain sight. People should not really notice that there is a safe parking lot happening in their community. So the benefits to the community are a reduction in unauthorized parking and loitering, which it takes up law enforcement's time asking people to move or ticketing people. It reduces crimes against people who are homeless in their vehicles. It results in fewer issues with litter and human waste, and it provides a connection to services. So in an attempt to end homelessness or address the issue of homelessness, the people that I encounter in the safe parking lots, it was mentioned in the video that we estimate there's 1,000 people at any given time in the metro area living in their vehicles. What we do know about those folks is that 20% of them are seniors, 45 to 50% of them have disabilities, 35% of them have pets. The rest are the rest, and the reason for homelessness are the ones that were listed earlier: loss of job, COVID. I hear COVID all the time. You know, something happened as a result of COVID, and now then loss of housing and results of ending up in the car. Other reasons are they can't afford housing, living on disability, family breakup. Where this connects to health, the stories that really grabbed me, you know, it was when people described their health issues: kidney failure, asthma, back problems, strokes, heart attacks. One gentleman that really caught my eye is he said he had prostate problems, and because he was living in his vehicle, he had to find a restroom frequently during the evening, and during COVID, they weren't available. So what I hear most often from the people who get permitted to be in the safe parking lots is gratitude. They're just the relief, the stress relief, is really kind of overwhelming it makes you really realize the challenge of being homeless and in addition living in your car. The services that people can get in a safe lot, in addition to the safety and the security and the sanitation, we are partnering with many different agencies like Foothills Animal Shelter, Jefferson Center for Mental Health, the Homeless Navigators, the Health Department, Benefits in Action. Those organizations are partnering with us to bring services to the lot. Often people living in their cars do not access services. They sort of remain hidden in our community or attempts to hide. And so this is an opportunity for us to bring the services to them. And we've had wonderful outcomes so far. Our first lot started in March of last year. The Jeffco lots began in the fall of this past year, but we've had some people get housing, some people get mental health support. We've had people get medical attention, even a few people hospitalized because their health problems were so extensive. People get a good night's sleep. The churches, I don't know if I mentioned it. Yes, I did, that most of these lots are in church parking lots, but often they'll offer a meal. They offer extra showers, and we have been able to connect people to these services. And I think the biggest impact is our effort and to stop the downward spiral of homelessness. You know, because the next step would be loss of the vehicle, and then the people are in the streets, and so it can, you know, and all the accompanying things, the health problem gets worse. The trauma of the situation adds to new issues. So the safe lots have been very effective and easy to do. I just can't emphasize that enough, that it doesn't take a lot of resources to establish a safe lot.
Thank you, Linda. We need to, I think, see if there's any questions. Do you have any other final comments?
I'm good. I mean, unless people have questions.
Thanks.
I will put the website in the, oh, somebody did it already. Okay, great.
Yep, it's in.
Great, Kathy, thank you. And if you know someone in their vehicle, you can also send them to that website, and it's a centralized intake for the whole metro area, so we can put people in lots where they need to be.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rebecca. Does anybody have a quick question for Rebecca or Linda?
I just wonder if Rebecca might know how the funding is lined up for going forward. You're shared amongst 3 municipalities. Do you have any idea what that's looking like going forward?
At this time, I think we're still going to have me do all 3 municipalities, and then maybe even hiring on a housing navigator to help with that housing piece. So I would do the upfront intake, make sure people have their vital docs, things like that. And then once they get a voucher or approved for housing, or ready to start the housing search, the housing navigator would help them with that. That's my understanding at this time.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're gonna move on now to some breakout rooms, and we have some set questions we want to discuss in the breakout rooms. I realize that some folks are going to be leaving us now, and thank you very much for attending. We will make this recording of the speakers available on our website. We'll send out an email. And also for the breakout rooms, we're going to have a hard stop at 7:20 and come back and then do 10 minutes of a wrap up and discussion of action items and just what we've learned and what we're all thinking. So we'll see you back here at 7:20 if Annie wants to do the magic wand. Thank you.
I noticed that it says the chat is disabled now.
Yeah, Marilyn, that's because the breakout rooms are open. So if you go to the breakout room, you should be able to operate that chat there.
Annie?
Yes.
Oh, this is Katie Miller. I have to log off the meeting. So I just said I won't be able to be at the breakout room.
No problem, Katie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Have a good one. We're just going to give about 30 seconds to let everybody get back in from their breakout room.
You're muted, Lauren, so it's all good. You're going to be speaking up in a minute.
Oh, whoops, sorry.
Right.
Boy, we lost a lot of people. Is everybody back, I wonder? I don't think so.
That should be everybody. We did lose a good chunk of people during breakouts.
Okay, darn. Well, hopefully
We
they'll.
lost half. Dang.
Yeah. Well, this will
Maybe
be
they
a
got kicked.
better.
Maybe they accidentally. Maybe they accidentally hit leave or something. I thought it left the room and it left the meeting or something.
Well, I don't know. The Nuggets are playing breakout rooms, you know. But anyway, thank you for those of you who stayed. And I'm gonna turn the meeting over now to Kelly Cast, who has kindly volunteered to do our wrap up. Kelly's an epidemiologist with Jefferson County Public Health and the implementation manager of the Jefferson County Health Alliance. At Public Health, she provides data and evaluation support to one of the divisions in the health department and jumps, and I know this to be true, right into any opportunity to work with community partnerships. She's been fortunate to work alongside the Rotary Club of Golden and Golden Community Partners through efforts to promote mental health. And although she no longer specifically works in mental health, she's continuing her work with Golden Community Partners on her own time. Prior to joining Jefferson County, she worked at the State Health Department for 13 years, running surveillance projects in infectious disease and developmental disabilities, as well as coordinating a statewide coalition promoting healthcare provider and community education. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, you bet. So this is our strong but mighty crew here who stayed to the end. I do want to make sure we thank Golden United and Golden Community Partners for bringing us this conversation today. You had a ton of people responding, so it just demonstrates the amount of interest and energy. And in the breakout groups, there truly is a lot of passion for this topic. I heard that there's acknowledged that nothing will change unless we are part of the solution. I heard that we have so much to be thankful for, and as a community that cares about each other, we also have solutions. In our breakout group, someone said that the lack of housing, that affordable, safe housing, is getting out of control, and it's going to hurt a lot of people. And I can't wait to see what all of us go from here. And so in my years at Public Health, just like Katie mentioned when she first started talking about health and housing, is that we too in public health have shifted away from that understanding of health as purely biological, that recognizing is the conditions in which we live that affect our well-being and affect our outcomes, our life outcomes. And housing, that threat of losing our home, the security and safety that we have within our home also affects our health, whether it's our physical health, our emotional health, or behavioral health. I appreciated when Mariah pointed out all the things that I take for granted by having secure housing. I can cook what I want. I can cook when I want. I don't have to worry. I have a place to store my medications, and I'm not faced with that stress every day. I heard what Rebecca said, that means that I'm not worried every moment of the day about safety, about food, about my belongings, and that my health, my mood, my behavior would take a back seat. Some of the things that Brian said that really stood out to me was that how precarious secure housing truly is. When we'd have to work for $28 an hour to afford rent, we are truly privileged to feel secure in our housing. And I think we take that for granted. I heard with Robin, just in the video with Robin, just that she shared what it feels like to work so very hard and achieve so much that housing can continue to be a challenge. Pulling in that mental health component that Golden Community Partners has is that we all have good and bad days. And what I learned today was that when we're experiencing housing insecurity, that can make it much more difficult to have those good days. So tonight we talked about the role of housing on our health, on our lives. Katie walked us through the effects of chronic stress on our bodies, blood pressure, our moods, depression, anxiety, our behavior, whether we had outbursts, we can hold relationships. We heard that people who are experiencing housing insecurity are our neighbors, they're seniors, pet owners, people living with disabilities. It's all of us. So I'm curious if you put in your chat, and I know some of your breakout groups did this, when our community members, when our neighbors are dealing with chronic stress like this, that might come from housing insecurity, what's one way that that affects our community overall?
I still have chat disabled.
Oh, you can say it then if you want.
Well, that's okay. I just didn't have anything. But
okay, well, we won't judge you for not writing.
Okay.
But think about that. I think we often put housing as an individual problem. We really heard tonight, and I heard in our breakout groups that it's not. It's all of us. It affects our community, it affects so much of us. It was encouraging to hear how we are supporting each other with safe parking, bringing the safety and sanitation and community. I really heard that those relationships that people can bring, that for one night, somebody can take that worry off somebody's shoulders. And imagine what that relief can bring to have that opportunity for one good night's sleep and to not just think about that moment and that emergency, but to actually be able to think about the next day.
Something we didn't emphasize is as children that grow up and you know, that's all they know, and that will perpetuate the cycle of poverty.
It is. We were all children, right? Our children grow, our children are part of our community, and they become members of working members of our community. So before tonight, the folks at Golden United and Golden Community Partners brainstormed a few ideas of what we could do next. I'm sure some of these came up in your breakout groups, but I think, Annie, there is a Word document. Oh, you got it. Action steps and resource lists. So that's over in the chat. And if, for those of you, if you're not able to see it, I bet there's going to be a follow-up email after this meeting that maybe, cross my fingers, we can include that document, because it is a wealth of information. And here's a couple ideas. And in that resource list, there's books, there's videos, there's articles, and there's also contacts if you want to do more. So a couple ideas that came out from ahead of this meeting was, first, we can learn more. And it's right at our doorstep. We can join the Golden United Housing Conversations, and I think there might be a link either to the website has come up, but they meet, I believe, the first Thursday of each month at this time from 6 to 7:30. I bet you could also send Kathy Smith a private chat with your email address if you're gung-ho about joining the group, at least to learn more. Another challenge is to talk with 5 friends about what you learned tonight, what you're feeling tonight, what kind of things are rolling around in your head. And in fact, if you want to give yourself a pat on the back, when you completed that 5-person challenge, feel free to shout that out on the Facebook page at Golden United or Golden Community Partners. You could, I heard somebody enjoys book clubs, but you could bring one of these books to your book club for a discussion. In fact, if you don't join a book club, maybe you could just pull some friends together and all read the same book and have a discussion on one of those books. There's ways to write a blog on Golden United's website. And if you're itching, start making a difference. Email local elected official. I actually saw that we had Commissioner Dalkemper on the phone or on with us tonight. Share your concerns, share your desire to find some local solutions. I am new to this conversation. I'm no way an expert. I learned a lot tonight, and I don't think I'm okay just sitting by. It was brought to us by Golden United and Golden Community Partners. Golden United Housing Task Force and their expertise and passion for housing, and Golden Community Partners has that emphasis on our mental health. And if folks want to unmute themselves and give a round of applause to our contributors, our presenters, this was a wonderful meeting and I appreciate all the time and effort.
Thank you for all the presenters.
It was very good. Thank you. It was excellent.
Thanks everyone for attending. And thank you, Kelly, for wrapping up. Really appreciate it. So we will be sending a follow-up email with information, and we have a blog that Josh, our new technical guy, wrote, and he'll probably be sending emails to you too. So welcome, Josh, and he'll add some of these things to the blog that's on the website, and we look forward to continuing this conversation. And thanks again for everyone who attended. Any final words from anyone?
You'll send the infos to get the recording of this, because we have other people that we'd like to share it with. Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll send an email with the recording and links to all of the resources.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie.